Welcome to the post-game podcast for Game 5. Matt Shantz joins the Rapcast. Hey, Matt, how are you?
I'm still trying to figure out what just happened, but I'm doing very, very well right now.
So, when that shot went in, that three-pointer that got disallowed eventually, what was your first reaction? Were you like, "Yep, this is good," or were you like, looked a little late"?
My first reaction was a gut instinct, like probably most Raptors fans, of not again. Like this type of thing just sort of happens. As soon as they showed the review, I felt good. I was confident that it would be overturned, but the first reaction was still that gut punch.
Yeah, was it? Yeah, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
For me, it was. I felt he was a bit late. Like I just felt that extra dribble. Like if it wasn't a bounce pass, but it was a straight pass, I think it would have been better. I would have saved that extra, like, whatever, 1/10 of a second. But I think the fact that that was a bounce pass kind of took some time off, and turned out that. What did you make of the Raptors not fouling in those 2 seconds up three?
I think with it being that close to the end of the game, it's tricky to foul because they can very easily bait you into a 3-point.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I think you're kind of stuck. I liked that they had that foul to give and were very concerted in doing that early, forced the Pacers to inbound it again. But yeah, once it's down to that 2.5 seconds, I think it's too late.
Yeah, too risky, eh?
Yep.
Yeah,
definitely.
All right, so let's talk about this game. Not a good start. JV, I think I think JV started this game off with like 3 turnovers, with Monta Ellis getting like 3 steals off of him, I think, on the low block. And the Pacers jumped to an early lead. There did not seem to be an answer for Paul George. And DeMarre Carroll, who I thought played good defense against George, but it didn't matter. Like, I can't fault Carroll for playing bad D. It's just better offense from George.
Yeah, George was just a monster tonight. It seemed like whenever Carroll would cut under the screen, George would be able to pop the open look. Anytime that he chased over, George worked the pick and roll perfectly to either pick apart the Raptors with a pass to somebody like Miles Turner, or just kind of be able to get into the lane and do a little push shot, or kick it out to an open 3-pointer. Like he dissected the Raptors at every opportunity.
Yeah.
Just the fact that he finished with 39 on 19 shots, you can't get much more efficient than that. He had his way. It was amazing.
And that's like 8 rebounds and 8 assists and 2 steals and 12 for 12 from the line. If the Pacers just had like one other half decent player, they might have won this game.
Oh, that's all it takes. And you see it in little spurts with Miles Turner. Like he is able to stretch out the defense just with that long range too, and is incredibly efficient with it. Like he shot 7 of 10 tonight, +9. So he's kind of getting into the mix a little bit, but you're right. The Pacers just need that second horse to carry the team. And because George is doing everything that he can, and for 2 games so far, it's been enough, but I can't imagine being up 39, putting up 39 points, being up, I think they were up almost at 20 going late into the game, like in the third quarter, and to still lose the game, he just must be livid.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the Pacers. They are very prone to offensive droughts because they rely so heavily on Paul George. So even when the Raptors were like down 13 in the fourth, I wasn't super worried. I think on Twitter it was on fire that, someone say one positive thing. And some guy tweeted, was like, well, we're down only 13 to the Pacers. That's actually not that horrible if you think about it. And it proved to be the case. But one guy we gotta start talking on the Raptors is DeMar DeRozan, who finally, he's 1 for 5 in the series. He's had one good game out of 5, and this was the one. He 10 for 22, 34 points, 12 for 13 shooting. What did you make of his game, and did he do anything different than the first 4 outings?
Oh man, I didn't pick out anything in particular that he did differently. I think that there was a little bit more of an effort to get to the basket, but I haven't actually looked at his shooting chart as of yet. But there was a few points where he really tried to get into the lane. He was kicking it out a little bit more. I read during the game on Twitter somebody bringing up a pop quote from a few years ago. It might even been last year, saying Kawhi Leonard doesn't care if a play is called for him. He understands that a play is called for the team to score. And so far in the series, it seems like that's been missed on DeRozan, that plays have been called for him to score.
Yeah.
Whereas today he fit into the flow of the offense a little bit better. I'm just looking at it right now. He only got credited with 2 assists, but he did get the ball moving a little bit more than normal.
Yeah.
It was nice to see a breakout. After Game 4, I wrote a piece just kind of not dissecting him. I was just insulting him for the most part, fully expecting that at some point he would make me look stupid, or hoping that he would. And today my article looks just like a piece of garbage. So
Yeah.
I'm quite happy with that.
Yeah, I'm split on DeRozan. I think he had an okay defensive game too. I know I counted at least 2 possessions where he stuck with George and forced him to pass.
Yep.
At least by not by staying on pace with him when he's going around the screen. That was positive. For the most part, I thought he got the whistle tonight, 12 for 13 from the line, which he hasn't gotten in 2 games in the series so far. So playing at home, loud crowd, I think you kind of expect that. And then I don't think he took any horrible shots. Like he took some like low percentage shots maybe, which he drained today. That's kind of the averages averaging out. But you didn't see him take any of those turnaround fadeaways with George hanging all over him. He definitely cut down on those. So I'd say shot selection improved.
Yeah, and it seemed like he was attacking George less. Through the first 4 games, he wasn't intimidated by George and thought, I can still hit my fadeaways, do all of those things. And George just took him out of his rhythm. Today, it seemed like he wasn't trying to prove himself by attacking George.
Yeah.
He was okay trying to back down Ellis. There was a few points on defense when he still I think he almost got caught napping against Ellis, who was able to get into the lane and cause some problems.
Yeah.
But he seemed to be a more focused on that end tonight.
Yeah, and it's like I want to make a soccer analogy here. Like when you're playing like I don't know if you follow European soccer, but in the Premier League, if you're a shit team or you're an average team, and you go up against a really good team, you're kind of okay with the loss as you play well, because you're going to get your points against teams that are, not as good as you, and you're going to get your points there. I think with DeRozan, it's like a similar thing where he's got it in his head. I think he's finally understood that against Paul George, the chances are that I'm going to be end up taking a really bad shot and hurting my team. But all it takes is a couple of switches, a little more movement to get Solomon Hill on me, to get Monta Ellis on me, to get George Hill on me. And against those guys, he has, like an 80% better chance of success. And I think his points today weren't against George. It was against some of those lesser players. Other than that one drive, I think in the third, where George kind of misread the screen and went way to the left, and DeRozan drove to the right for the jam.
Yep. And George does that perfectly for the Pacers regularly, is that they run him off a little pick. Tonight, it seemed like rather than picking on DeRozan like he has the first few games, at least from what I saw, it seemed like he was trying to get more mismatches onto Lowry, or maybe it was that the Raptors were more happy to concede Lowry on George on the perimeter. So it was nice to see DeRozan kind of take advantage of those opportunities as well. And even early on in the game, Carroll was able to post up Ellis as well. So maybe that's, made the Pacers a little bit less willing to switch. I don't know.
The other guy we got to talk about, and this is the recipient of the A+ grade in the quick reaction, Norman Powell, the second round rookie from UCLA, who has taken our hearts by storm. He is the sixth god, Matt Shantz. Even in Winnipeg, if you could walk the street, he could do anything he wanted.
I'm both amazed in a good way and a bad way of how important a 46th pick has become to the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, he turned the game. He was a team best plus 16, and just was dynamic. When he went up for that dunk, at first it looked like he was going to flub it a little bit. It kind of rocked in his hand. But his energy, his effort on Paul George, really making him work. The Raptors have a steal, and I am At one point, he was even playing small ball four, and when he was drafted, he was said to be a little bit undersized for shooting guard. But Casey has really trusted Powell, and um, I think he's earned his way into getting 25, 30 minutes a game moving forward. If he gets benched for somebody like Terrence Ross, I have nothing left. I don't understand if that happens.
You could argue that he defended George better than Carroll in that fourth quarter once Carroll picked up his fourth.
Oh, definitely. I think Norm actually, his energy changed the game.
Yeah.
He was denying the ball rather than just trying to chase Carroll, trying to chase George around. Carroll did an amazing job as normal, well, considering what George did. There's too many Georges in this series. It
Yeah.
drives me nuts. Um, but yeah, Powell I think he's a little pest with his wingspan, and I think he irritated George.
Yeah, that's the point. You talked about him being undersized, and Andrew always makes this point on the Raptors Weekly podcast is that height almost does not matter in the new league. It's all about like wingspan and standing reach, and Powell's got that at 6'11" and a standing reach of like 8.5 feet. So he's covered. Like he's a good defensive player, and as you pointed out, like the deny action was amazing against George. It's much more effective to not give George the ball at all than give him the ball and then defend him. It's common sense, but it's just that small difference between the way Carroll and Norman plays him just made the difference in that fourth quarter. And once George got back into the game, he the one thing George we've seen him do in this series is that he tends to get frustrated when he doesn't get his way against the refs, and when he sees Norman Powell defending him and not getting the calls, it kind of spills over for him.
Yeah, was this his third straight game with a technical? I think
Yeah.
I've been surprised. I haven't watched a lot of full Pacers games. I've seen quarters here and there. I didn't realize that he was so much of a almost a hothead. Like
Yeah.
he things irritate him very easily.
Yeah.
So Lowry kind of rolls on top of him. He pushes him off and does the Kevin Garnett. I'm going to stand over a shorter player. He tried the same thing. Well, not with a shorter player, but tried the same thing with JV last last game. And yeah, it gets under his skin. And I wonder how much of that is trying to carry so much of a load and not having that help
Yeah.
that that is irritating as well. So maybe we wouldn't see that so much as if there was a 1B type of player on the roster.
Yeah. Like I think from his perspective, I mean, he reminds me essentially of Chris Bosh and the Raptors, kind of like the only guy who's playing. He looks around him and he sees some contributions from Miles Turner, which basically should be bonus because he's a rookie and basically you don't expect much from him. And then he looks at the vets like Stuckey 1 for 10, Monta Ellis just having another horrid game, just missing like step back threes. That's got to frustrate him. And you combine that with being defended by this pesky guard, and it does affect him. And he took some couple of really bad shots when the Pacers went down 6 late in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, he seemed to really be forcing things early on. A lot of his action was he caught the ball in movement, and in the fourth quarter it was, and I wonder how much of it was being pestered by Norm. But in the fourth quarter, it was all isolation and very little catching while on the move.
Yeah. Um, what did you make of the starting lineup change? Patrick Patterson came in for Luis Scola. I don't know how Luis Scola goes from playing like 20 minutes a game to 0. Like that's a bit of a drastic. Well, I know I'm happy about it, but I just don't understand why it took so long. That's a move that I think anybody following this team for any length of time would have suggested to you. But Dwayne Casey waited for 4 games in the playoffs to make that happen. But Patrick Patterson came in, did not have, just was not in rhythm, and that was the big fear of making this move for Patterson was that he's so effective coming off the bench. How does he react to being part of the starting 5? It didn't go well for him. 3 for 10, 7 points, minus 20 overall for the game. I think that's a game worst actually.
Yep.
That's why some people felt that get somebody like Jason Thompson into the game so Patterson maintains his bench role. What did you make of that?
I was surprised, just because Casey has been so adamant all season about the continuity of he likes his rotations the way they are. that he likes Scola to kind of as that vet presence to settle things down at the beginning, even though, historically this season the Raptors would get blown out in that first little stretch, and then be saved by the bench plus Lowry. So I was shocked by that initial move, but even more so that Scola just didn't play, and I think it was because you know Casey really kind of lucked into some small ball units that were successful during that run and just kind of kept pushing that smaller ball. Um, so I wonder if the plan initially was to get Scola in kind of in little chunks, but having to fight back and having to match some size, match some mobility. Turner is a pretty terrible match for a guy like Scola, I think, who has trouble guarding people on the perimeter, even though he doesn't have a lot of ball skills at the moment. It's still a tough match for Scola to get out and hedge on picks and things along those lines.
Yeah, and yeah, it's. I don't think this is not a series for Luis Scola. I think it was evident. It was actually evident during the regular season when he played Indiana, and continues to be the case. So I'm glad the move did happen. The guy that we talked about, Norman Powell, kind of like lifting the team with his energy and his tenacity. To me, he's the toughest guy on the team, actually. Like if I had to like rank them, like I think he's the guy who's unfazed by the occasion, just does not give a shit. Like he's coming to play. Kyle Lowry's up there, but Bismack Biyombo, man, talk about him. 16 rebounds, 10 points, and 4 for 4 from the free throw line. And they were clutch free throws. Like they were free throws. I wrote in my quick reaction that when you foul Bismack Biyombo, if you're the Pacers, you expect him to go like 1 for 2 or 0 for 2, and basically it be a successful defensive possession. But when he nails both free throws, you must be like, what?
I was shocked. I was expecting both of those times for him to split it. The Pacers were very happy to send him there because the other option is he gets up and dunks because he's right underneath the hoop and automatic 2 points. So they sent him there very, very willingly. And to see him respond that way, just that was game saving right there. We needed every single one of his free throws for him to be 4 for 4. He also made one energy play on a pick and roll with Lowry where he threw down that two-hander dunk. At least on the sound on the TV, I wasn't in the arena, but the crowd was dead at that point, and that play alone helped kind of ignite some energy, and I think was a little bit of a turning point.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, man. I think his finishing has been so improved this season. I mean, when we signed him, there was a stat that was going around that he hadn't made a made field goal from outside the painted area all last year. And you saw in the last game he hit like a jumper, and even today his finishing was superb. It's strong. Like there's no issues with his hands, which we talked about. In 24 minutes, 16 rebounds, man. That's an insane rate, and it kind of made up for the some of the difficulty that JV was having today. JV was excellent again from the field, 5 for 8, 5 rebounds, but the series kind of looks to have taken a bit of a toll on him, and it's also the lack of touches for JV. I mean, 8 shots for a guy who basically can take Miles Turner whenever he wants. What did you make of JV's performance in the sense that like enough touches, like? Does he look a little beleaguered? I know he's getting fouled like every other possession, and the refs aren't calling it just because it's the playoffs. Maybe that's having an effect on him. Like analyze JV for me in this game at least.
Yeah, I think that fouling issue has definitely has taken its toll on him. But as you mentioned earlier, there was that 3 quick turnovers to start the first half. And I think that takes him out as well. So his 8 shot attempts doesn't look good in regards to the number of opportunities that they looked to him for. But they looked more often than that. And there was a few times that he managed to kick out. But the Pacers, I think, have really worked his kind of drive through the lane with the sweeping right hook. They've kind of timed that well and send that second man just in time. So Ellis came in, I think, once or twice. George came in once or twice. And it kind of flusters him a little bit. If they come in a little bit early, then he's set to be able to kick it out. He's okay with that. Yeah. But right when he's about to bring it up, if they get in there, it throws him all the way off and really causes issues. So his turnovers were a problem early on. And I think that kind of initiated some of that, taking a step back from him.
Yeah.
And a lot of his touches that, are kind of designed for him to get are on putbacks, and he just wasn't able to crash the glass quite like he has.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think anytime you send help to JV on the first dribble, I think when you pass on the ball in, he's analyzing, he's surveying the field, he's okay there. But as soon as he puts it down and you send the help, he gets a little nervous. He hasn't perfected that, lift it back up and throw it out yet. It's like that Vlade Divac was awesome at that. Like as soon as the defense came, he picked it up and he was tall enough to survey and just hit even a guy on the weak side. JV is like, I think that's one area of his game which probably should have been developed faster than it would have had. I think he's in year 4 and he still can't really make like a pass to the weak side after help comes in.
It was nice to see him hit a mid-range jumper without hesitation. He got it open, and often even when he's open, he still kind of pauses. Yeah. He pump fakes when nobody's there sometimes. But there was nothing that stopped them, and he just lined it up. Yeah. So that was really encouraging to see, and I think will help keep some defenses a little bit more honest in that regard.
Yeah, and credit to Dwayne Casey for reading his situation perfectly and sticking with Biyombo in that fourth quarter, and that obviously paid dividends. I know we get some calls for JV playing in the fourth quarter, but Casey's been pretty good at managing his big men in the fourth quarter and seeing which one works well where. So, Dwayne Casey, a little bit of props.
It's almost a hot hand theory that he has going, but with his big men, it's more so who's engaged, who's active, who's hitting the boards. So if JV is more active on the glass and is causing issues for rotations, he'll stick in there in the fourth quarter now. Whereas if it's Biyombo, he's very happy to make that switch as well.
Yeah. Hey, there was a guy in this game who went 1 for 6. But that one was quite big. And let's listen in to the game-changing sequence from Game 5.
There's a ring from those days with the Spurs back in 14. In the corner. Three-pointer is good. Terrence Ross. 2-point game. Huge shot by Terrence Ross, and there's the rookie, Norman Powell, with a steal and a dunk.
There you go, man. That's the 3 to cut it to 3, and then the 2 to tie. There you go. That was the sequence in the fourth quarter that brought the Raptors all the way back and completed a 13-point comeback. Terrence Ross 1 for 6, but what a one, man.
Yeah, that one shot will be remembered really well to bring them to that gap, and then because it was immediately followed by Norman Powell's big dunk. So those two go really hand in hand and will be the big play that people remember. But I think it was shortly after that, Ross jacked up 3 straight three-pointers.
I was going to avoid that. I wasn't even going to mention it. No, I know.
What happened? What happened to the shitting on Ross time that we fit into this? Yeah,
right after that, he took like 2 step back. I think 2 of them were just bad shots, and one of them was like a clean look, which he missed. That's okay. Hot hand theory, whatever. But that was right when the Pacers were like. That was the time when George kind of went like rogue and started like jacking up shots as well. So Ross's excitement was canceled out by Paul George's recklessness, basically.
Yeah, I think it was Matt Moore of CPS after Ross hit that big 3. I think he tweeted out something along the lines of Ross is going to gun it like JR or something like that. Yeah. Because you just saw the look in his eyes that he was wanting to feel it and was wanting to leave his mark. And he left that one mark and followed it up with some unfortunate stuff.
Yeah, which nobody will remember because he won the game and so on.
Yep.
So as we continue down the player analysis, in the Raptors with a comeback victory in Game 5, Game 6 goes Friday night in Indiana. We'll talk about that just momentarily, but let's round the player analysis with Corey Joseph, who returned to form, 3 for 6, 8 points, plus 12. Lot of very, of the 5 games played so far, he's had no problems getting past the Pacer guards in like 4 of the 5. And today he kind of resumed regular service after taking Game 4 off. Monta, whoever it is, it doesn't really matter. He can get into the paint so easily and start kicking out. And that's what he did in the fourth quarter. And he's so fast at penetrating that once he actually does get into the paint, there's like like a 5 foot radius of space around him where there's nobody. And he has so many options to either shoot or pass, and he tends to always make the right decision.
Yeah, he definitely left his fingerprints on this game, and I think outside of Biombo and Norm, those three were kind of the I would say unsung, but we've talked about all of them now. They made a significant mark on the game, and Joseph, I don't understand how somebody can back up about 8 feet beyond the 3 point line, have a defender nowhere on him, because they're just standing at the 3 point line waiting for him, and still just blow past them. He gets that little bit of a running start, and there's no stopping him. Um, and once he's under the hoop, he just is so crafty. He's got lots of different options, from kind of going up and under or curving back around into the lane and kicking it out. If he really beats his man and the big man has to really challenge him, he's able to kick it out to another option. So he was just fantastic, and it's so nice after all these years to have a backup point guard who's just Mr. Reliable. You know that you can trust him on both sides of the court, and there's really no. He doesn't excel at any one thing other than driving and his decision making off of that. He's not an elite shooter. He's capable. He's just solid all around, and there's no real holes that make you worried. And that's fun.
Gone are the days of Grievous Vasquez and Jared Jack and Roko Ukic and Will Solomon and Jose Calderon and Mike James, and the list goes on and on and on. I think we finally have a half decent backup point guard, and there's no controversy. I like that. Remember, we always used to have a controversy. He should be starting. He should be starting. Year. Right now, it's just so clear cut that like even last year there were like calls for Lou Williams to start when he was jacking shit up. So.
Oh man, yeah, yep. It's nice to have the pecking order set, and Joseph's mentality is perfect for that. He came to Toronto knowing that he wasn't going to usurp Lowry as the starting point guard, but that he could play on and off ball, get lots of minutes, and contribute. I think outside of Norm and you mentioned earlier Biombo, of their mentality of being the most mentally strong on the team. Yeah. I think Joseph is just that calming presence as well. As nothing really phases him. He wants to win above all else, and I think that you can see that the way he plays.
And it's kind of crazy that we've gone we're almost 30 minutes into this podcast and we haven't even mentioned Kyle Lowry, who this is his typical game of the series where he's shooting poorly, 3 for 11. His assist numbers don't blow you out of the water. Yet at the same time, you watch the game and you're like, this guy had a pretty solid game.
Yeah, it was nice to see him knock down his free throws. He hit 7 of 8 today, and so far in the series it's been a little bit hit and miss. Came up with a huge rebound in the fourth quarter, right when things were still that little bit dicey. Managed to get the board and keep possession on the offensive glass. So once again, he did the work that he needed to do. Early on, George Hill was burning him a little bit. He was getting caught on rotation, and it reminded me of last year where the Raptors were just kind of over-helping and over-rotating and panicking. Yeah. So it wasn't just Lowry. It was kind of team responsibilities that way. But it was nice to see Lowry just kind of settle down and have a solid impact.
Yeah, it's a point that I made in the quick reaction I wrote, is the overhelping in the first quarter. The Pacers had 11 threes, and a lot of them came from the Raptors sending help from the weak side over to the strong side on Paul George and leaving George Hill pretty much wide open. And George, who's an excellent cross-court passer, can make the skip pass really well or work it around the top and get it over to George Hill. They got a bunch of threes that way where they swung the ball really quickly to the weak side and got. But I think Casey made that adjustment where we weren't as help aggressive in the second half, and the Pacers only hit 2 threes in the second half, and I think that was some credit needs to be given to the coach for that one as well.
Definitely, and I think George Hill was 4 for 4 from 3 in the first half, ended up being 4 for 7, so they really stopped kind of that over rotation. He wasn't left open for those wide open looks like he was early on in the game, and once the Raptors are able to settle down and just focus on their basic rotations that they do, basic switches, nothing too complicated, no over rotations. it was good, and I think Norm helped with that. And it's once again, it's weird and almost unsettling that a second round pick is needed to bring that calming influence of, let's take a moment. But him and Joseph just, I think, really settled it down.
Yeah. So let's put the euphoria of a Game 5 win behind us and kind of look at the big picture right now. What was your series called before this whole thing started?
What did I call the series?
Yeah.
I called it in 5. I was calling the gentleman's sweep. I was far too optimistic.
Gentleman's sweep. Oh, I have not heard that one before, man. That's pretty good. I had him in 7, actually. Like split, and then home. So far, so on target for me. What do you think of Game 6? Pacers come out kind of like they did in Game 4, or like what's your feeling here in Game 6 coming up in Indiana?
Oh, I have no feel for who the Raptors are right now and what they could be at any given time. I wonder if outside of the ACC, whether DeRozan will get the same friendly whistles that he got tonight. George will continue getting his friendly whistle. So my gut tells me that the Pacers will force a Game 7 and we'll see another game in Toronto.
Yeah.
But I also hope that the Raptors come out and really say, we close it out now. We get an extra day or two of rest before round 2 and really, really force the play.
Yeah.
So that's my hope. But if I had to make a prediction, I would say the Georges take over and force a Game 7.
Yeah, I think DeRozan's whistle is going to be key. There's 2 games in the series where he's gotten to the free throw line 0 times. And if you compare that to the regular season, where I think that rarely, if ever, happened even, you get the sense of how different the whistle is in the playoffs. I know there are some like stats out there would say, well, on average, if you take the square root derivative of this, and you'll figure out that it's the same whistle. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not. It's evident it's not. And this series is kind of a testament to that, and DeRozan being the key example. So I think that's going to be key in Game 6, what the whistle looks like. Just how DeRozan was due for a big game and had it in Game 5. I think Kyle Lowry's due a big game. You know what I mean? He's pregnant with a big game. He's like 9 months and late with a big game.
He's had a few games this series where he hasn't really shown up. He hasn't been Kalo. Then there's been other games such as today where he makes a mark, but he hasn't taken over, and we haven't seen that yet this series, and we saw that regularly throughout the regular season. That whenever the Raptors needed a little bit of a run, particularly in the second half, Lowry stepped up. He hit those transition threes where he just stepped into it. He forced the play on the pick and roll. He caused and forced turnovers, tough rebounds. He got one of those tonight. But we haven't seen the full package in any one game yet. And yeah, I would agree with you. It feels like he's due. But it's also one of those things that just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that it will happen.
Yeah. No.
So George Hill, props to him. He's doing an adamant job of slowing Lowry down and causing some issues and making Lowry work on the other end. But I'm hoping that we get one of those games where Lowry just shows, I am the second best player in this series. I am an all-star. I deserve to be on one of the all-NBA teams based on the season I had. And we haven't seen that yet, and I'm hoping we get it in Game 6. We'll see.
Yeah, the Pacers and Raptors are facing kind of opposite problems, where the Raptors have their role players have been pretty consistent for the most part. They've all produced at high levels. It's their 2 stars that are the variable, Lowry and DeRozan, who had up and down games offensively and scoring-wise. And the Pacers are the complete opposite, where Paul George has been stellar in this series in pretty much every game. He's just searching for at least a couple of the role players to step up. It's one of those games within a game that you notice in the series is that the subplot, I guess. Yeah, go ahead.
The one game that the Pacers really dominated the Raptors, he got that. Ian Mahinmi stepped up. Stuckey hit a couple of good shots. CJ Miles wasn't completely useless like he has done the rest of the series. So they got those little contributions throughout. But outside of that one game, the supporting cast around Paul George and George Hill, who has been the second best player for Indiana so far. Outside of those two, and little spurts from Turner, very little production from anybody else.
Yeah. And the one Pacer that I thought might have a bigger series, just because he might have been being defended by DeMar DeRozan a lot, is Monta Ellis, who just even like he's lost his explosiveness from years gone by, but even when he does explode, his finishing is so poor. His outside jumper is non-existent. And like 3 for 10 again in this series. Like, he's the guy who actually scared me going into the series, but he's been the most disappointing starter for the Pacers for me.
Yeah, definitely. I was expecting him and to a lesser degree CJ Miles, because he can get hot from deep as well. So those two, I was expecting to at least have some impact on what's happening. Make the Raptors at least think about who they're covering. Spread out a little bit, but yeah, Ellis has been pretty terrible so far, and that contract that he has is looking pretty rough moving forward.
Yeah. All right, so I think that kind of wraps up Game 5. The Raptors take a 3-2 series lead and go to Indiana on Friday night at the Bakersfield House. What is it called now? It's they keep changing the name of that damn arena.
I think it's Bankers Field House.
Banker. Okay,
something
it's Banker.
Like that.
Okay,
Yeah.
Last time they were there. A lot of Raptor fans made the trip. I'm sure they will again for Game 6. But keep in mind of the signs, guys. You can't take anything greater than 8.5 by 14 or 8.5 by 11 because the Pacers ticketing staff are a bunch of dicks, and they will take them away and put them in the trash right in front of you.
You could poke an eye out with one of those signs, so try and keep it small. I think for Game 4, up until tip-off, there were still some seats available for $20. So if anybody wants to go down, it's worth the trip.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that covers the Game 5 post-game reaction as the Raptors win and go take a 3-2 series lead. Matt, thanks for joining, man. I know you were at a bar, got some cheap wings to go with this game. How the game was great. How were the wings?
They were 25-cent wings, and you get what you pay for. But they were pretty good overall, and gave me a chance to watch the game. Nobody else in the bar cared about the game, and
really?
So that kind of threw me off because I was clapping and people stared at me. So that was weird, but yeah, I was the only one in the game who actually cared until the final couple seconds, at which point I heard a few people go, "Oh, they hit the 3-pointer," and then turn away. So it was still fun. I enjoyed myself.
Some context here is that Matt's in Winnipeg, and what were the other sports that were on TV at the time? Was it the hockey playoffs?
No, they actually, every TV in the bar was Raptors. They completely turned over to that game. I'm not sure if anything else was on. The Jays game had started, but they hadn't put that on. So it was all Raptors. It was just nobody cared. I was blown away because Winnipeg, considering it's not thought of this way, is actually a good basketball city. Mm-hmm. Lots of very intelligent fans out here, and so it was weird that nobody else there was really caring, but I was fine.
All right, great. So, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we sign off, just a reminder to subscribe to the podcast, rate us on iTunes, rate us on Stitcher, rate us on Acast, or whatever mobile device you listen to. Give us a rating on those apps and tell us what we can do better. And if you want to support Raptors Republic, do visit patreon.com/Raptors Republic. The podcasts continue here on the site. We'll be back after Game 6, which is on Friday night, with a post-game recap. And that's along with the regular scheduled podcasts of the Raptors Weekly and Raptors Weekly Extra, blah, blah, blah. It's all happening here. Matt, thanks again for joining us. Listener, most of all, thank you for tuning in to the Raptors Republic podcast. We'll see you after Friday night. Bye-bye.